So again, thank you so much for carving out some time today as we chat about security, a very important topic when we think about paper cut and something that we talk about all the time. But before we do that, let's get some house cleaning items out of the way. Now, if you've been on our webinars before, you know the routine here and what I'm going to talk about. First and foremost, this webinar is being recorded. So it will be posted on our website within a week or so. So stay tuned for that if you've got some coworkers that were unable to attend today. As always, my co-pilot is Mr. Doc Balgi. Doc is on mute right now, and he will unmute later on in the webinar. And Doc is taking care of all of our questions. So go ahead and locate the Q&A section within WebEx and ask any questions as we go through the webinar, and Doc will answer those. Doc's also made a comment in the chat section. So why do we want you to pull the chat section up as well? Well, there's going to be a webinar. There's going to be a trivia question at the end of this webinar, and it is the requirement that it's answered in the chat box sent to everyone. Don't send it privately to Doc or myself or answer in the Q&A box. Chat box to everyone. First person that answers the question is going to win a prize, and we will get that sent out to you. And for those of you on the call, maybe you are a part of your solutions team or IT team, Doc will be doing his technical webinar on security at 1 p.m. Central Time today. If you have not registered and would like to attend that webinar, go to our website, www.acd-inc.com, hover over PaperCut MF, select webinars, and it will allow you to join the webinar. You can't register for them the same day, but it will allow you to join the webinar. So please do that. And I know Doc would be glad to have you attending his webinar as well. So again, let's get to why we're here today. So security. Honestly, we're having this webinar because this is what we hear at ACDI. We hear security all the time. I say this almost every webinar. If you've attended any of our webinars in the past, this is something that we've talked about relative to certain verticals. For example, healthcare. That's typically what we think, right? When you think of security and when you think of your customers, we immediately go to healthcare. Why is that? Well, because we all know that HIPAA is important. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the webinar, so I'm not going to go in too much depth here. But security is one of our 4 pain points. If we weren't all on mute, I'd ask you to recite all the pain points to us. But I'm going to go ahead and say this: accountability, security, cost savings, and accessibility. But security is important. We're hearing it a lot. There's even been new security measures put in place recently that have been a part of our past webinars. So again, very excited to bring this to you today. But as we always do, I want to start painting a picture. I want to talk about security a little bit in reference to what this looks like for your customers. And keep in mind, this is all in efforts that we can have conversations. That's what we're all trying to do, right? That's what you're trying to do as you go out to your customers. How do you start a conversation? I'm not insinuating that you can't do that. But you know what? There are times where we want to talk about solutions. We want to meet a need that customer might have. Sometimes it helps to tell a story, right? I know it helps me, so that's why we're doing this. You start bringing these types of stats. Look at this. More than 80% of companies report concerns about print-related data losses, with 61% reporting actual losses in the past year. That's a very important number that you need to remember. Remember, 61% reporting actual losses in the past year due to security. Look at this. Cyber crime damage costs to hit $6 trillion annually by 2021. You're probably thinking, man, what's that have to do with paper cut? Maybe nothing, but it tells a story. It helps us tell a story about security and what this looks like for our customers, and that it is a concern. Let's keep going. Let's talk about the hidden cost in data breaches that can be very difficult and expensive to manage. Look in the middle, data breach costs, technical investigations, notifications. Look at the bottom one, legal and regulatory activities. I'm going to talk about those a little bit more as we get into the presentation here. Well, how about the one on the left? Well, who can afford that? Lost business or reputation. I think all of us on the call would agree that our reputation, and more specifically, our integrity, is one of the most important things that we have as an individual, and the way that we operate in our business day in and day out, and even in our personal lives. How do breaches occur? Well, let's look at this. First, you've got to have someone accessing the network physically. There's a lot of folks out there. You guys know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. There's just a lot of people who don't care. They're looking to make a buck and a dime off other people's hard work. You know, remotely bypassing network security, physically accessing unsecured documents. Well, that applies to paper cut. We're going to talk about that more here in just a moment. I like this here. Not protecting your customers' printers is like leaving a door open to your entire organization's network. I'm going to share a few stories with you in just a moment that will really ring true and to really help put this into perspective when we're talking about paper cut. We're going to talk about different levels of employees within companies where this has a huge impact. Ever heard of any of these data breaches? I have. The Target one impacted me, guys. I was impacted by this breach when it happened back in 2013. I can't remember how much money was put back into our account, but it was not much, 40, 50 bucks. Someone had gotten our information. But so some of this, as you guys look at this information here, might have actually affected you when these happened. All because there's people out there that don't care, and they don't care about you. They don't care about me, right? But how can we care? How can we show our customers that we care about them? What can we do to help with security being a concern? Let's talk about a few different verticals or industries, if you will, to where this is relative. Again, what are we doing? Talk track. So you go in and talk to these customers. We know what to talk about because all of it's going to bleed into paper cut at some point. You know, let's talk about finance. What's important to them? Well, you see, that's a big deal. I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit more here in just a few moments. Education, FERPA, PII, student records. Here's what I want us to get out of the mindset of, because I was in this mindset, quite frankly, about a year and a half ago. When I thought of security, I thought of one industry, in which I'm about to show you here in a moment, healthcare. It's not the case. We did a healthcare webinar probably about 8 or 9 months ago, maybe late last year. We talked about a lot of penalties and fines that we've seen in the medical arena. I've got a story for you. And this didn't affect me personally, but it's a story that was shared with me of a school district that printed a document off that had the child's personal information on it. And it just so happened to contain that child had an illness that he eventually was going to die of. Very tragic, obviously. And no need to go into what that was. But what happened is someone saw that print job sitting on that copy machine. I don't know if it was a teacher. I don't remember it being a teacher or a student. But guess what happened? Everybody found out about that child's illness in that school. And just like a ripple effect, you know how bad news carries quick, right? How the gossip carries. It's just like waves in the water. It goes pretty fast. I don't know what happened to that school district. I don't know what kind of fines or what's going to happen to them, but think about education. I want to talk about PII. Any vertical, any customer that you're calling on that deals with personal information, names, addresses, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, it does not matter. They are held to the same standards as what healthcare is when it comes to HIPAA. But it just so happens that HIPAA is the main thing that we think about when it comes to healthcare. I want us to get in a mindset where security is important across the board, and it is something that we can talk about across the board as a major pain point when it comes to their businesses, their reputation, their integrity, their lost data, whatever that might be. They are all affected. Well, that's what I want us to think about as we go through this and as we talk about it, as we're painting that picture of what the landscape looks like for you as you're out calling on your customers. I've said it many times before. You don't have to necessarily know all the features and benefits in PaperCut. You don't have to know all of that. Don't stress yourself out because you don't know everything from A to Z. Focus on this. Focus on the pain points. You have that consultative conversation, and there's no telling what it turns into. So what do we do? What do you do? What do we help support you to do? Well, first of all, talk to your customers to find out if security is a priority for their organization. How are you currently, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, ensuring compliance and controlling device usage? Are you currently doing this? If you aren't, is there a potential for a security or an ethical risk? I'm asking some open and close-ended questions here. And guess what? It's really going to depend on what level that these folks are. What do we think about our C-level executives? Well, they probably look at the big picture. Guarantee you they're concerned with security, regulation compliance, and the impact that all of those issues and some of the issues that we spoke about just a few minutes ago have on their organization. They cannot afford to have a security breach. They cannot afford to have a piece of paper sitting on a copy machine that has Casey Cobb's social security number and date of birth, and someone picked that up. They can't afford that. So these are our big picture thinkers, right? We all work for companies that have C-level executives. We all know what big picture thinkers are, right? Well, let's talk about the line of business folks. Security and regulation compliance are a main concern. Probably generating and analyzing reporting is one of their main responsibilities, right? So purchasing, HR, legal, finance. Well, think about that as you're out talking to your customers. You're talking to those decision makers, the people that it makes sense to have these conversations. Let's take it down to IT. If I could see a show of hands, is these the folks we typically start with? Maybe. Depends. I know all of you want to start with the decision makers, but security is a major concern. Along with what? Additional equipment purchases, technology, solutions. That's where these guys are. So maybe that's a little bit different conversation. But you know what's funny is what's important to IT, they're going to hear it from the C-level folks if they're not falling in line with security regulations. What are you doing, Mr. or Mrs. IT director, manager, to ensure that we are secured, to ensure that we don't have a breach, to ensure that our documents are protected? Let's look at the print life cycle. How do we reduce security risks? Well, number one, before printing, at the time of printing, and for the lifetime of the document. PaperCut can protect the print even before it's printed via secure print release. This is talk track. This is what we're talking about up front. Once we find out, is it a need? Is it a pain point? Is this something that is important to them? PaperCut also has the ability to track print jobs that have been encrypted. We're not going to spend a lot of time on end-to-end encryption, but this is something that's recently new in one of the latest version releases. But wouldn't it be great to be able to have an interactive dashboard? All of you have seen this before. If you've accessed your NFR at your office, if you've been on site with a customer, this is it. This is the dashboard that allows them to see who, what, when, where, why, and how somebody's printing. Who by user, department, client, matter, it doesn't matter. A level of transparency that they might not have or used to. But it gets back to asking those questions and what's important. Look at all these. These all have to do with security. And all of these features that are already included in PaperCut can help fall in line with the security measures that they're looking for to prevent a lot of what we saw just a few moments ago. FERPA, HIPAA, PII, PHI. This might have been the first time you're seeing this. This might be the first time some of you are hearing anything about these types of security regulations and fines. And we're not even talking about the fines. You could Google HIPAA fines. It's astonishing what some of these fines are just for not keeping their documents secure. Said it before, it's a no-brainer. Let's talk about mobility. Not only does PaperCut have mobility printing covered, but we have printer on as well. Why am I talking about printer on? Because printer on offers a secure way to print off network. PaperCut's mobility is contained within the network and can provide all of the same security features, specifically secure print release. So I print a job from my phone, tablet. Guess what? I can print it to that virtual queue. It's not just going to sit on the device. Same with printer on. We can do that off-network printing. Gosh, I'm excited about this next slide. For those of you who didn't know, we're now offering a biometric access point. Identity is what we're calling it. It's pretty cool. This biometric reader speaks to PaperCut just like our card readers do that we've sold some of you guys probably thousands of times. So this is the ultimate level of security. These store 3,000 fingerprints. Guess what? The individual can even scan their index finger, their middle finger, their ring finger, their thumb. It doesn't matter. They can scan multiple fingers to make sure that it's secure. A lot of you have asked for this over the years, so we're excited to be offering this now. So if you didn't know about it, guess what? We offer a biometric reader now. So very excited about this. As I get to questions and we start to wrap up, let's just think about just overall what we've talked about today. And you can hear it in my voice. I'm passionate about it. And it's not because I'm here at ACDI and this is something that I talk about all the time just to sell more PaperCut. I'm passionate about it because this is what we hear from customers. This is what we're hearing from the field. If I am to sit on a call with one of you guys or one of our sales reps, they're going to bring up security concerns. But my hopes are, as we wrap up here, is that you think of security on a different level and how important this really is to your customers. So thank you so much. If there's any questions, as always, I see Doc is already answering some questions here.